Hi ladies and gentlemen, this is our screen capture video of a persuasive research essay sample for the persuasive research essay unit. We're going to look at Sydney Ames' unrestrained activism paper here, and although the paper will be available, I'll read through some of this, highlighting portions and explaining what she's doing. As you can see, she's got her heading correct, her name, my name, the name of the course, and the date that it was due. She's titled it Unrestrained Activism, and she's got her last name and page number in the upper right hand corner. Scrolling down to the introduction, what you're going to see here is her establish the problem that the paper ostensibly is dealing with, but then transition into our audience and what she wants to have happen. So let's look at the first part here. It says concentrated animal feeding operations, commonly known as factory farms, aim to maximize profits and often disregard animal welfare. These large-scale operations focus only on financial gain and therefore see animals not as sentient beings, but as products whose sale can be augmented with the model of mass production. Many of these facilities subject animals to horrendous living conditions. Some even utilize objectively cruel farming devices like battery cages and gestation crates. So this opening essentially establishes the problem, which I'm going to put in yellow here. So this portion is basically giving some situational context for why there's a need to have a conversation. Then we get a transition into the audience. It says, the cramped, overcrowded conditions of factory farms have long been the subject of criticism by animal activist organizations, with some going to great lengths to eliminate the practice and extricate the animals. Direct Action Everywhere, DXE, is one such organization. Their justifiable anger and dismay at the practice employed by many factory farms has led to their application of nonviolent direct action to animal activism. Direct Action Everywhere aims to confront animal welfare and factory farming issues head on. They participate in open rescues where members walk onto a farm and liberate as many animals as possible. Their goal is to not only change a particular animal's life, but to show the public the true nature of factory farming. So this introduction is fully informative. We don't get any of the persuasive point. Instead, we get some context. She establishes the problem that we're going to see she shares as a problem with her audience. And then we get a taste of what the audience does and why they're relevant to talk to when talking about this problem. Now we're going to transition into our actual point. And so one of the things you're going to see in a lot of these persuasive research essays is that their introduction has 2, maybe even 3 paragraphs to set up some context for the issue and to set up a relationship with the audience and establish why they're talking to that audience and what they want to persuade the audience to do and why. And so that usually takes or can take more than 1 paragraph to do, especially with these complex arguments, which is a little bit of a departure from the introductions that we've had in the past, which have been kind of stereotypically 1 paragraph that ends in a thesis statement. So let's look at the second introductory paragraph. It says, as noble as DXC's motivations have been, their participation in open rescues and dramatic demonstrations has led to some labeling them a terrorist organization and a national security threat. The bad reputation the organization has built has made it particularly difficult for DXC to accomplish their goal of creating animal liberation activists, defined as members of the vegan community whose consumer behavior aligns with animal welfare and whose aim is to radically uproot the entire speciesist system. When animal welfare organizations use harsh or aggressive tactics, the result is that the very goals of the activists are undermined while their tactics are opposed by the public. So we have this opening here that really establishes the true problem. Basically, what Sydney has done is establish a connection with her audience, acknowledging that her audience's goals are just, but she's holding firm that her audience's means, how they approach the issue, is not the best, and that's going to be the core of her argument. Direct Action Everywhere has gone to great lengths to accomplish their liberation-centered goals, with many members facing multiple felonies for trespassing and civil disobedience. DXC is raising funds for their legal team by asking members to donate for the right to rescue. The reliance DXE has on member donations makes it all the more important that they continuously gain new members. The organization will only be successful if they find a way to overcome bad press and share their message in a way that does not jeopardize the validity of their platform. DXC must tailor demonstrations to fit their goal of gaining members, support small acts of activism, and enforce the guidelines of their organization in order to circulate a positive media image. This is actually Sydney's thesis. She is going to try to convince this group that they need to tone down their approach in order to meet their goals. And this is a great way of dealing with a resistant audience because she shows really clearly exactly that she understands exactly what they want, which appeals to both ethos and pathos, which sets up a dynamic argument where their general dispositions are aligned, their goals are aligned, but the way they approach those goals are not, and that's where her persuasion comes into play. This is kind of a unique approach to this paper that is not quite as head-to-head conflict on the main issue. Sydney has really found the portions of the argument where she agrees with her audience and the portions where she disagrees. And because she lays a foundation around that agreement, she's going to be able to convince them or do a really good job of making a persuasive essay towards them that will help them to see her side of the issue. Let's go through some of her body paragraphs now. Currently, DXC's commitment to nonviolent direct action and goal of creating activists do not come across clearly from their dramatized protests. So this is her topic sentence. This is what she's going to try to prove. One such protest orchestrated by DXC occurred in a Chick-fil-A on Cow Appreciation Day. During the demonstration, 2 activists wore chicken and cow masks and lay on the floor while another pretended to stab them with a knife. Chaos ensued as the scene unfolded, with bystanders describing sounds of shouting and crying children. One observer was Tina Leacock, who was attending the establishment with her own children. She described the experience in an interview with the New York Times. My first reaction was shock, like, is this real? Leacock said. The knife she was holding, it looked real. So here we have kind of a 3x paragraph going on. We've got a chunk of information describing a situation that is representative of the kind of things she hopes her audience will avoid. Let's go on to some of her commentary. As effective as these types of demonstrations are at getting attention, most of the attention received is negative. A protest like this puts onlookers off of animal activism and may be traumatic for young children. Watching such a theatrical and gruesome display of what is believed to take place on factory farms does nothing to display the values or successes Direct Action Everywhere holds as an organization. It simply creates tension and isolates the members from those who may have been swayed by their message. This commentary really keeps in mind the audience's goals. Rather than chide them and tell them that they were terrible or awful, even though Sydney may believe that, she tries to persuade them with their own goals in mind. This is not going to get you what you want. You should not approach it this way. And that really makes a good connection with her audience because she doesn't assume that they're evil people, even though they did some actions that she disagrees with. Then we go down to the last half of the paragraph here. Members of the vegan community commented on DXC's actions during the Chick-fil-A incident and remarked on the effectiveness of the strategy. Do you want that non-vegan to remember the interaction as an unlightened experience that allows them to rethink some things? One such commentator replies, or one that leaves them remembering that traumatic time someone stormed into dinner wielding a knife and throwing fake blood around. So this concrete detail helps to establish further that their message isn't getting through, and it just solidifies that Sydney is probably right, that they should not do demonstrations quite like that. Direct Action Everywhere must always keep their bottom line in mind. Confronting injustice does not have to be a traumatic or harmful experience. For DXC to spread their message in a positive and productive way, they must limit the amount of attention-grabbing stunts they perform and prioritize providing information about the organization and the injustice they seek to fight. So these concluding sentences do a great job of wrapping up the paragraph and kind of selling her point. And you could see the blue and yellow are her words, the green are the concrete details, and you could see that we've got a fairly solid array here of distribution between her words and the words of others. Let's go on to the next paragraph. Although DXC's recruitment problem may have spawned from their negatively received media stunts, it may also have come from their lack of support of non-liberation activists. This is a great transition that acknowledges the previous point and moves into the next one. The bad press that the organization has acquired thus far isolates possible allies the platform may develop through conversion, but DXC's lack of acceptance of more moderate activism severs possible relationships with people that may already support their underlying message. This really makes sense. Basically, she's saying that they're too extreme, and by saying that those who aren't that extreme aren't on the right track, they're really undermining their own goal. Continuing, DXC places a lot of emphasis on collective effort and aim not just to adjust consumer behavior, but to radically uproot the entire species system to create substantial and lasting change for animals. Notice how Sydney quotes the actual audience, showing that she has a real understanding of what they're about. You should be doing the same thing yourself. As relevant as this viewpoint is to already extreme animal activists, it downplays the effectiveness of individual choices. Not only do consumer behaviors play a huge role in animal welfare, but DXC's connection to the average individual consumer could create bonds through which they could share their ideas of liberation to trusting and open ears. Again, you could see how Sydney does a great job of explaining it in terms that her audience would connect with. As a strict principle of veganism is central to DXC's overall philosophy, they can begin to encourage this type of individual change while also exposing interested people to their liberation theories. If people are eased into animal activism, they will be able to find their own motivations within the movement without being put off by the stigma some activists experience. Further great commentary that really aligns their two goals. Continuing. The Vegan Society PR officer states that all vegans would like to see is a world in which no animal is exploited, and the most effective way to get there is by empathizing with the non-vegans and offering practical solutions to their obstacles to becoming vegan. Now Sydney brings in a quote of the actual groups that are being antagonized and shows them to be really sympathetic and seemingly easy to get along with so that her audience will be able to connect with that idea. If DXC were to follow this perspective, they would open the doors to both sympathizers of the cause and people with potential to convert to sympathizers. Doing this would allow them the ability to continue participating in their more media-focused events without closing the doors on possible supporters. Devoting part of their organization to the connection to and possible recruitment of the less extraordinary activist would help DXC accomplish their goal of building liberation activists. And see how this concluding statement and this commentary really wraps back to their main purpose. This would allow you, DXC, to accomplish your goals better. That is a great way to connect to the audience. Continuing. Although allowing for a system of recruitment despite the bad media attention is necessary for DXC's success as an organization, one way they can further improve their prospects is to address the bad media attention at its source. One of the biggest criticisms of direct action everywhere that lands them in this accumulation of bad media attention is the questionable morals some of their practices display. So again, we have a great transition. She kind of layers things on top of each other and shows how this is another way that they could help their cause. Continuing. Direct Action Everywhere champions the method of nonviolent direct action and uses a concept as an outline for every demonstration, protest, and open rescue. The extreme emotionality felt towards the subject at hand, however, can lead members of DXC to violate critical aspects of nonviolent direct action that are outlined in its definition. So here she shows she understands that they do have guidelines that should keep them out of trouble, but she asserts that they are not able to continue to display those because they are so passionate about it. DXC specifically references Daniel Hunter's definition and analysis of nonviolent direct action on their website and subtly boasts about the achievements they have acquired through its use. Hunter points out the important pillars of nonviolent direct actions as being to love your enemies, be honest and listen well, and give your opponents a way out. This is all critically establishing that not only does she understand what they're saying, but she's kind of setting up her argument that they're not doing what they say. In recent open rescues, however, these pillars are not upheld. What a great simple transition. We'll highlight that and put that in blue. DXC trespassed onto farms, yelling accusations of demands on farmers while damaging their property and stealing the animals. In calls for government action against this militant veganism, people have rightfully declared farmers have the right to feel safe in their homes and go about their lives and work without harassment or intimidation. Look at how she handles this pretty deftly, because they are not coming across well right here, but she's not using language that is particularly antagonistic. Instead, she's spending some time just showing how reasonable their opponents are versus how unreasonable the behavior of some of their members is. Agriculture and Food Minister Alana McTiernan has said of the open rescues, action like those we've seen over the past few weeks simply alienate the farming community and the general public and deflect away from genuine attempts to improve animal welfare while supporting livestock farmers. Another reasonable quote. Now let's get to the commentary. Members of Direct Action Everywhere are so protective of the animals and so desperate to liberate them from their conditions that they disregard the safety of the farmers themselves. As difficult as it may be to sustain these principles of action in the heat of the moment, DXC must remember its roots in the concept. Enforcing true, nonviolent direct action among its members will allow DXC to avoid defining the whole group by a misrepresented message or method. What a great and reasonable set of commentary here. That really sends her point home. Continuing. Despite the formerly mentioned flaws in the structure of Direct Action Everywhere, as an organization, the noble and vital attempt that they have built themselves on is fighting for those who are unable to fight for themselves. Great transition here. They have taken great strides within the animal activism community and proven themselves to be a formidable opponent of the societal acceptance of factory farming. If DXC is to continue to be successful on a national and eventually global scale, they must ensure that their message is spread far and wide and is left untainted by negative reactions to their demonstrations. Dramatic demonstrations and potentially harmful open rescues should be limited, while circulating information about the importance of veganism and activism should be pushed to the forefront of the organization. Should Direct Action Everywhere express acceptance for the beginning stages of animal activism and provide a more approachable slant during demonstrations, they will continue to gain members and create the liberation activists they seek. And that's a great conclusion that wraps it all up. And essentially, since Sydney is proposing a change to the status quo or a change to how they might operate, this paragraph essentially wraps it up by showing what would happen if they actually followed through with that change, which is a great way to set the paper off in the minds of the readers and to wrap up the whole paper. If you scroll down, you'll see the works cited page, and the works cited page starts its own page, so there's a little bit of blank space, but that's okay. And we have the good old hanging indent, and you could see she used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different sources, which is probably about the average. And you could see that she has a direct source from her actual opponents here, or resistant audience, and another source here. And so she really spent a lot of time on their website learning what they were about and figuring out how to speak to them, which is what you should do for your paper. If you scroll out a little bit and put this into just kind of a smaller form, you could see the balance, blue and yellow being her words, green being the words of others, and you can just see how balanced it is after that introduction where I stopped highlighting. I hope this video over this essay helps you. We'll be doing more videos over this in the future, and I wish you well on your paper as you start your research. Thank you.